Hello, everyone, and welcome to 50 Now What? I'm your host, Alicia Sutton, and today's episode is one I'm so excited about. In this season, we have been talking so much about how to maximize your life in this next phase of life. But what can we learn from the younger generation? In this episode, I speak with Adjoa. We discuss how we as women show up for each other through different generations and ask important questions like, how can women support each other in different stages of life? We explore the timeline and expectation around motherhood and ask, what can we learn from each other? I'm so thankful for this conversation with Adjoa. Now let's get into the episode.
All right. Hello, Adjoa.
Hello, Alicia.
It's so good to see you again. And I'm so delighted to have you on the show. And I just have to say, because I'm always big on spilling out my heart and my spirit. And, it became very important to me to, as we're all trying to filter out the current noise and the climate that we have right now, that we take a step back and that we're making sure that we're keeping safe spaces for the generations that are coming behind us or they're coming behind me and coming behind you as well, especially with our women, because it just seems so important to me that we are making sure that we give them the room to continue to be the light that their soul is intended to be. That's just how I come at things. So even when I was developing this podcast, yes, it's, 50, now what? Because I'm a woman in my 50s, I always had women like you. I had you in mind. I had younger generations in mind and making sure that they were always front of mind. So even as we move forward in this, it may have some things to do with age, but it's still in a way that it can be projected for you. So that's why it was so important for me to have you here as we move forward. And as we talk about intergenerational alliances, how do we as women, how can we show up for each other through different generations, even though we're different? What are your expectations from someone who is older? What do you look to them to kind of be for you?
Wisdom, guidance, a roadmap to doing the things that I want to do. I think our frustration sometimes comes in where people are giving us a lot of advice, but they haven't done the things that we want to do. And so that can feel very, not only confusing, but it could almost feel like control. I guess in a way it's dominate. I'm older than you, therefore you should be listening to me because of XYZ. Whereas it's that we don't want, we want the guidance, we want the wisdom, we want the roadmap from the generation before us. We just want to make sure that we're being led in the right direction. And so it's important for us to network up and to network with people that have done the things that we want to do. So for instance, I remember I had an auntie who she was giving me a lot of relationship advice, and she wasn't anywhere in the place that I wanted to get to. And so it can be kind of like, well, okay, you can maybe tell me what not to do, but maybe you can't tell me what to do.
Gotcha.
If that makes sense. And so, yeah,
it makes a lot of sense. And it's funny that you mentioned that because, oh my God, I had a similar situation. It was I don't even want to call it advice. I think it was this awful thing that this lady said to me. Actually, she said it to my mom while I was standing in the room. And I'll just give you a little bit. My mom was basically, my daughter just, I was in my early 30s, and she was like, my daughter just bought her first condo. She bought a condo not far from you. And this lady goes, oh, nice. And then she turns to my mom and goes, she ain't gonna never get no man like that. And I just remember feeling like a kicked puppy. Like I had made this huge accomplishment, and somehow I was reduced to whether or not what this was going to be a reflection as to whether or not I had a relationship or not. And I think it was that moment that I was like, I will never do something like that to a young woman, is base her value on what it is I think is important for me. And so I completely get that. And with all that said, what are the types of advice, for example, that you've gotten from an older woman that did resonate with you? What was it was there anything that clicked? Was it anything that you said, yeah, I can work with that?
I think the best advice I ever got was to do the things that I want to do now, because you don't always have time. That's happened to me a few times. I remember one time being in a bathroom at like a casino or something. Me and my girlfriend, we were laughing. We had a couple of mimosas. We were just enjoying life. And this older woman looked at us and she goes, enjoy it now because it goes by very fast.
She's right.
And we looked at each other. We were like, wait, did that just make us sober? Or should we,
Kill the buzz.
or should we get more of those sides? Which one? you know,
I absolutely love that.
Yeah. So, I had another friend of mine who was 51, and she said, Michelle, if you want to have children, she goes, be very intentional about doing that. She goes, because I waited too long and I thought I had all this time, and then I got to an age where I couldn't do it. And so,
yeah,
the best advice that I'm getting from women is go after what you want and do it now. Do it when you have the energy, when you have the drive, and when you don't have things that could potentially hold you back.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah. And so, I moved with a little bit more sense of urgency, because I remember the day that I turned 30.
Mm-hmm.
And now I'm 36, and it was like yesterday.
It was like yesterday. It goes by quickly.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It goes by quickly. And where does that put you in terms of with that support and different stages in your life? Were there stages in your life where you kind of felt like this is the support I needed? Like there's different types of support that you need now at 36 that you didn't need when you were 30 or when you were 26. Where you are now, is it just a matter of trying to get it done? Or are there other types of support that you need? Or do you just need somebody to kind of be in the background and say, hey, I'm here if you need me? Or, you know what I mean? Because I remember when I was turning 36, I was kind of almost like, I didn't want anybody to say a whole lot to me. And so now I'm always a little bit more, I'm always like, I'm careful with how I present advice and how I show up for someone depending on where they are in their age.
No, I mean, I am naturally stubborn. So I had to get over that hump of feeling like I could figure it out without the guidance of older women. And now I'm realizing that what I need is more consistency in that guidance, not just these one-offs that happen in a bathroom or happen, in random conversation. It needs to be something that is more sustainable. So like literally building relationships with older women who were friends, but they're also mentors. Like I have a friend who's 72, but she's not just my friend. She's obviously my mentor because she's 72 and she's accomplished so much. And so now it's, recognizing that you don't know it all. You can't know it all. You need support. You need guidance. You need advice. And so now for me, I just needed to be quite consistent and finding the spaces to even meet these women. Like last night I went to a networking event and I didn't necessarily meet any mentors, but I met a lot of women who were looking for the same things, looking for representation, looking for community, looking for just that support group that it's difficult to find.
I love that. And I think that women like me who are thinking, well, maybe these young women kind of want their space and, they don't want you in their face like that. And they maybe need to find a different approach to making sure that we're showing up in a way that's consistent and helpful in a way that, like you say, in a mentorship type of a role.
Well, I think it's also then finding the women who want that. I think maybe it can feel dominating when you're not even looking for it, right? Like giving unsolicited advice where it's not even being asked. And especially too, not just for the women who want the advice, but finding out about that young woman and what it is that she's even trying to accomplish, as opposed to just thinking that where she wants to go. Like that woman telling you that you're never going to find a man.
Wow.
What if you were a lesbian?
All right, she didn't ask that.
No. I mean, even something as simple as like, you don't even know what my sexual orientation is to just assume that like I'm trying to find a man, or what if I want to be single, or
right.
What if my life goal isn't to find a man, and so even just making sure that we, I even do it with friends of mine that are in their 20s, making sure that we are not projecting what we want onto someone else without finding out a lot about them first.
I think that's kind of the key. And I especially when we're talking about the differences between, generations and those differences and, coming from Gen X, we were always kind of thought you just work and people tell you what to do and you keep doing it. And then you kind of just, I was very fortunate. I had my mother's parenting style was a lot more liberal, very different. I was very fortunate in that. But at the same time, you still kind of have this work till you drop type thing, and you don't have to have anything. It's all 9 to 5. And what I learned as more millennials came into my workspace was this workplace balance. And it is kind of this, this may be my job, but this is not my life type thing. Another question I want to ask you is, how is the workforce now? What is the tempo there? Is it more of a, I know we had a whole gig economy going for a long time. Are things going back to 9 to 5, which I hope they're not, but is it more flexibility in terms of how you show up in what is considered work, with air quotes?
Right. I don't think it's going backwards. I mean, I think that our generation is recognizing that there are possibilities. I met a bunch of women last night who have multiple side gigs. And that is more important for them to maintain their autonomy and do what they want to do and make money in a way that actually fulfills them. And they're happy to do it, as opposed to going into a 9 to 5 and being ruled and owned by somebody. I mean, in the last few months, we've seen tens of thousands of layoffs.
Yes.
I'm reading posts on LinkedIn of like a man who just bought a house and had a baby and got laid off.
Yeah.
So we're realizing that these companies don't care about you whatsoever. It can be gone tomorrow. You can go from making $150,000 to making zero overnight.
That's true.
Then the tricky part is finding a way to make money in a way that makes you happy, and even just learning how to do that, because the way their education system is set up, they're not birthing entrepreneurs. We are still being taught in our traditional education system to follow the rules. You do this, you go to school, you go to college, you get a 9 to 5. And so it's really hard for those of us out here trying to be entrepreneurs, because the generation before us, there aren't as many entrepreneurs, right? They followed this blueprint. And so we're kind of figuring it out ourselves. And yeah, we're figuring it out ourselves. It's even going to business school. I found I didn't go to business school, but I have friends that were like, Michelle, even business school still didn't prepare me for entrepreneurship. They teach you business on how to make whatever company you work for more profitable. And so that's an area where I'm seeing people doing amazing things, but it's hard when that's still not how society is being raised. We're not raising entrepreneurs. We're still raising people to be in this mold. But we want to break free, and we are breaking free. And so that's definitely a struggle.
Right. Having the mentorship in that area is scarce, in other words, because it's very, very difficult. And I mean, I have to get some truth to that. I was a 9 to 5 lady for a long time, until very recently. There are a lot more of us who are finding our way out of that mold, but it's new to us. And it's very difficult to now say, hey, this is what you should do. It's like, yeah, you know what? I just started doing that too. I just, left a job that I've been working on for 22 years, and now I'm doing a podcast. So, you know what I mean? I'm learning that too. My mentor is someone who's substantially younger than me. So I get it. I think we're all kind of in this mold together, which is why this conversation is so rich and so necessary, because we may all need to be kind of holding hands going, okay, let's do it. I'll figure out what I can figure out. I'll let you know, you figure out what you can figure out. We'll meet in the middle. Break, that kind of more of a team kind of alliance that I'm thinking too. And I can see that coming into fruition. That's why we need these conversations. And the same thing goes for outside of work, goes in terms of dating. I mean, how is that now? What is that like? Because I've kind of just stepped back.
It's difficult because there's so many options. Like, you could just get on an app and you could be dating 3 girls at once in different cities. And it's really, really difficult. And I don't even know what I can say about that, because I do not really date. I was in a relationship for 4 years, and it sort of recently ended. We're still really good friends, but only being out in the streets, as the kids say, for
these streets.
For only a few months. Only a few months. I'm like, what it is messy out here.
It is a mess. And let me tell you what, I come from that too. I was sort of the serial monogamist, and coming up, I was when I was in a relationship, I was the girl who, if I I'm seeing someone, I have a boyfriend or whatever, I'm gonna probably be with them for a couple of years, and then then I may be single for a couple of years, and then I'm back in a relationship. So I think too, and this may be true for you as well, the generations behind, is that there seems to be, especially with single women, is that, somehow you are this Sex in the City. It's, this is what you're doing all day, every day, and that you're just out and about and out in these streets. But, people who want to be in relationships or who want to be dating aren't necessarily hitting those types of stereotypes. And that's why I'm glad we're having this conversation, because it looks very different for different people at different times.
Yeah.
But are there certain things that have changed in terms of what you're looking for? The goal for us was always find a husband, or, find your mate, or, your significant other, and that's it. Have your kids, and that's it, and sit it out. Is that still the vibe, or is it just kind of like...
It's the vibe for the people I hang out with. I am typically around women in our mid-30s. We want a husband. We want a family. Most of my friends want that, to be honest. And what's weird sometimes is that sometimes I don't know if it's because of like the public conversation about feminism and equality or equity, but sometimes it can almost feel weird to still want that. Because so many people are, so many people are veering away from the traditional, like how to live your life traditionally, that when you say you want to still live traditionally, it's almost like, well, why would you want to do that when you can be free? That traditional way of life, to me, doesn't mean not freedom. I want partnership.
Right.
And I'm also African. So I think there's a cultural difference for me, whereas I'm still very okay with my husband leading, as long as he allows me to live my life and he honors me, respects me, helps me achieve all my goals.
Right.
To some degree, I am still a bit of a traditionalist. But at the same time, because of my timeline, because I want kids.
You want babies, you want to have some babies.
I'm very open to being flexible in what that looks like and being okay with the outcome no matter what. Like if I don't find someone to marry me, it's okay if I end up having a child out of wedlock. I think maybe that's changed, where there isn't as much stigma if you have a child out of wedlock.
That's actually very true.
Yeah, it's like, sis, just go ahead and do it. I have a girlfriend who's 40 or 41 now, and she was like, I was where you were at your age. I went out, I found a man, I had a child. Whereas we're still getting a lot of advice from the older generation saying, you should find a husband first. I had an auntie literally get mad at me because I wasn't married yet.
Wow.
Have a husband first. Like, do it in this sequence. But I think our people are realizing, even if you do it in that sequence, it doesn't mean happiness. That the man could still,
it does not
cheat on you or abuse you, and you could still end up alone. You could still end up a single mother regardless. And so that narrative is shifting, where it's like, do whatever you want to do. If you want to go, to a sperm bank and have your child, go ahead and do that. If you want, so at least there is a bit more freedom in creating your own, whatever that means to you.
Okay.
But there have been a couple times where I feel like it almost feels weird to still want something really traditional, because so many people are veering away from anything and everything traditional.
Wow. I think that's the first time I've heard that. I know that there's been a lot of talk about and statistics about how, so many women in the future they are anticipating will be single and without children.
Oh, wow.
Some by choice. There's actually a very, basically it's sounding to be pretty valid in terms of the number of women in the very near, 2030, over half will be single and without children. The realities are there. I mean, I had a point in my life where I basically had to let my mom know. I got into my late 30s, and, and I somehow I wanted to have almost some reconciliation, this may not happen for me. I may not have a child. And I was like, and I didn't know what to expect the answer would be. I thought the answer would be, you better go out and get pregnant right now. And out of nowhere, it was like, then don't have them. If you can't get one, then it's okay. And having that resolve, okay, so it's okay. And it was foreign to me to go, oh, it might just be okay. And kind of gave me a sense of resolve. And I'm hopeful that regardless of the outcome, I think if it's something that you want and it's your intention, then do it. Because it's a lot of people who are mothers who probably shouldn't be. And then I find people who really want to be a good mom, end up being just really good moms.
Yep.
You know what I mean? It's almost as if it's in your spirit, in your soul to do it. But whatever the outcome, it's going to be okay, because I found that I've become a better auntie, I guess.
Yeah.
I like to think so. Maybe I'm just maybe I'm saying too much. Maybe I'm putting myself out there. I don't know.
No, it's true, and I don't think it's always by choice. I don't. I think, again, I think some of the advice I got from the older women about the sense of urgency. I think a lot of us, again, like 6 years went by for me very fast.
That
So
goes
I
by
think,
quick, yes.
yeah. So I think that there's a lot of factors. There are, like, right now we're in like basically an epidemic of women around my age having infertility issues from the environment, from the things that we're putting on our skin. I mean, there's a book that I was reading for a long time that I had to put it down because it was making me paranoid about all the toxins in the environment that are impacting our fertility. And it's real. You know, there's higher rates of PCOS, endometriosis,
Yes,
all
I've
these
heard a lot
things
about
are,
that.
impacting our fertility that didn't happen before. My mother had 4 kids easy.
Yeah.
And she thinks it's weird that I've never even been pregnant at 36, and I found out me and my sister both have endometriosis.
Wow.
And then, of course, our careers get in the way. Before we realize it, it's like, okay, well, we're not financially ready to have a baby at 25. And so then you wait till 30 or 35 when you are financially ready. And now it's difficult because we have all these infertility issues. I don't think it is. I think it's a lot by choice.
Yeah.
I think it's maybe it could be 50-50, who knows? But I think for a lot of people, like I know women who, took 3-4 years to get pregnant.
Wow.
So, and, for a lot of women, it's not possible. So I think that it's partially by choice and partially by unfortunate circumstances. You don't realize what's going to happen and you try to have a baby at 35 and you can't. But it's because society has made it in such a way that you can't afford to have a baby at 25.
You can't.
You can't afford to take care of yourself at 25 because school loans are how many hundreds of dollars a month, and where am I going to live? And rent is $2,000 minimum if you live in a city, and it's finding men who also don't want to have babies until they're financially ready, and so everything is getting pushed back.
Yes,
not necessarily on our own accord, but because the way that the world is shaped right now, it's like we can barely even afford to take care of ourselves. We can't even think about having children.
Well, that's the thing, though, the fact that your generation is even thinking about, look, if I can't afford to have a baby, I just won't have one until I'm in a place to do that. And generations prior, including mine, you just ended up pregnant, and I mean, I can't tell you how many baby showers I went to from the time I was 19 to 26. It was just baby shower mania. And then they started to taper off, and, they're all having, have grown children now, but no one was thinking that. And they struggled. People were struggling.
Yeah.
And their whole thing had always been, you don't want to be here struggling. And when I hear you trying to do it the right way, because that actually is kind of the way you want to do it right now, you don't want to be struggling.
No.
I think there's a lot of speculation about, and I've taken a lot of time to make sure that I don't do a lot of the generational bashing. You know what I mean? Yes, there are differences between us, and a lot of them they're very funny. They can always be fodder for a joke and stuff like that.
Right.
But I think that it's important that that we are creating a space to have these types of conversations and dynamics, because it up levels the understanding about what is happening in and around our world. But with all that said, do you feel like it's become more of a sacrifice? Do you feel like, okay, you are still doing the right things, but, I don't want to say live in a time of regret, because I don't think you should, because I think women always have a big timeline. Everything is based on your ovaries. Let's just face it. Our timeline is based on ovulation. How many times is the egg going to drop?
Yep.
and that puts everything in hyperspeed. And like you said, 30 to 36, it did go by fast. I don't even remember 30 to 36. I remember what that lady said to me, unfortunately. I remember that moment, and I was 31 years old, and then the rest got a blur in between. Literally. But do you feel like you're sacrificing too much? I mean, to put it bluntly, do you feel like you're sacrificing too much?
There's always going to be a sacrifice. My little brother actually had a tough time with me. He said to me, he thinks that the world often lies to women and saying that we could have it all.
Mm.
And I fought him on that. But I think that there's a lot of truth to it. I don't think a lot of
Yes.
women, unfortunately, get to actually have it all.
I agree.
He was like, Michelle, you're trying to do all of these things, yet you say you want a family and a child. He was like, you can't be doing both at the same time. You're either going to be putting a lot of your effort into this, or you need to be putting your effort into finding a man and cultivating a relationship and spending time. Like, how are you going to do X, Y, and Z and also raise a family? And I was just like, I'm like, but he's, and he wasn't even coming from a man. He's like, Michelle, he's like, you're my sister. And I'm only saying this to you because I care about you. And I know how important it is for you to have a family. But the things that you're focusing on right now are not going to get you that in the timeline that you have left, probably.
Wow.
Then it's like, okay, then you think to yourself, then I should have started a decade ago in one of the two areas. But a decade ago, 25, I was a mess.
Right.
You're a mess.
You're a mess at 25. Everybody is a mess at 25. And if you're not, you should be.
Like, not that you can't be a mother, but I just haven't, like, there are very few 25-year-olds that I've met that are actually prepared to have a baby.
Right.
Even the ones that do have them, who did have them at that age, I'm like, I don't think you should have. Because you ain't ready. You're still not ready. Right?
Still ain't ready.
I say it all the time. And so, but then at 25, it's like, well, what I want to do at 25 is not what I want to do today.
Right.
I wasn't even Adjoa at 25. I was Michelle at 25. Now I'm Adjoa. Like even my name has changed, And so, I'm like, if I would have had a baby, anyone that I would have had a baby with at 25, I would not be with today.
Right. Well, for the record, I think you would have been an awesome mom at 25. I think sometimes it's all a learning experience and a learning curve.
Yeah.
I mean, our parents had us very young. My mom had me, in her early 20s, and my brother, in her early 20s, and yeah, it was probably a mess. But a child that's being loved, I don't remember the mess.
Right.
But at the same time, I think it's smart to put yourself in a position. What's happening with young women today, and what I'm getting, is that they're going about this in a very smart way. They're going about what it means to be a woman, what your purpose is, and what your dreams are. They're putting that out there so that they're going to be able to better nurture a child. And even if it's just the one, what that child's going to be in where you are now will probably benefit, well, not just probably, will benefit a lot more.
Correct.
From you coming into who you are, from going from Michelle to Adjoa. They're going to benefit so much more from that, and what you're going to have to give from that. So, I don't know where to lead with that, but I do want to say that it is a learning between the two. What you're learning from someone who my age, who's not, a few years older. I just turned 52 in March, so there's that. Thank you. But I still feel like I'm learning. I still feel like I'm growing, and I can tell you that I am learning I'm taking the time to want to have these conversations and learn on the in between. But what role has, and I know you're a very spiritual person. It kind of just rolls off of you just from hearing you talk. But where is spirituality for women today, and how is that feeding into your life decisions in any place where you are right now?
Well, for me personally, it's very present in my life, especially just having gone to Ghana, and I was there for about 8, maybe 19 days or 20 days or so, and I met some very spiritual women, and they kind of changed my life in a way. I had been searching. I've always been very spiritual. I was searching for it. I think the cool thing now is like there's like different types of churches popping up. I don't go to church, but there's like churches that are directed for young people.
Yeah.
And I think that, to be honest, over the past few years, there's been so much public acknowledgement of abuse that happens in churches that I think a lot of young people are searching for ways to have a relationship with God that doesn't require you to be inside of a church and necessarily have to go through another person to get to God.
Yes.
That to me is crazy. That to me makes no damn sense whatsoever. You are
I
you are
agree.
just you are just another regular man,
Mm-hmm.
and you're trying to convince me that I need to go through you, another regular person, to have a relationship with God.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think a lot of us are realizing that that's something that that I love, that I meet spiritual people every day who would never and will never step inside of a church. And yet
Mm-hmm.
they are so much more spiritual, like spiritually aligned, and live their life in alignment with their spiritual values than some people who go to church, because the people who go to church think that just going to church is the way
Yeah.
that all of a sudden means that now you're a Christian. You
Yes.
know? And so that is a shift that I love to see. My parents are still very religious, but it's a shift that makes me feel finally like I can have a relationship with God. I remember,
Wow.
growing up, and my all my aunties and uncles, not my uncles, but my parents are still very religious. And there was this guilt that you felt that if you didn't go to church, you were a bad
Mm-hmm.
Christian, as if God only spoke to you in those four walls.
In the church. Mm-hmm.
So that's something that I think is wonderful. And there's just, and we're exploring now, there's, young people who are Buddhists, and all
Mm-hmm.
different types of ways to be spiritual that, years ago wasn't a trend.
It wasn't,
And
and it was considered weird. You were pretty much
okay, yeah.
admonished.
Yeah. I mean,
You would be a demon. Yeah, they would call me a
yeah.
demon. Yeah.
You'd be a demon, or it's I know
Mm-hmm.
some churches do things like disfellowshipping people, like they'll kick you out if you're not living up to their standards, and like it's like, what? I mean, is that it feels like the opposite of Christianity and loving everybody, and
It is.
also with just the acknowledgement of different sexual orientations and how you present in the world.
Yes.
20 years ago, it would be very hard for a transgender person, or, a gay woman or gay man to walk into a church
Yeah.
and say, I want to worship here. You couldn't, you couldn't enter.
Couldn't.
Yeah. And so we're creating our own spaces where everyone is included, and it's love and it's acceptance. And I just want to see more of that, because the old way of doing things, not only was it restrictive, but people were being put in harm's way, literally.
Literally. That's actually very true. I was brought up in a very, like I said, at home it was very different. I grew up, once I started not wanting to go to church so much, I didn't get admonished for that, and was allowed to seek out a little bit more of my own spirituality. But like you said, from one place to the other, it's very different for me now. And I know that my sense of spirituality and my connection to God is very different from what it was I would have been if I had stayed in a very traditional four-wall church environment. And one of the things that I'm seeing, and that is consistent with what you're saying with the generations behind, it's like everybody's already popping into what spirituality is in their whole being. And even the Gen Z are like the ones coming behind you. And I don't know how you feel about that. And I want to talk to that too, about where you seeing the generation and the women coming behind you who are much younger than you, in their 20s, or 16, 15 years younger than you are. Are they seemingly to kind of come in, almost popping in like, this is the person I am, and this is who I want to be, and this is what I feel God to be. Almost like very different types of beings. Are you seeing that? And is that filtering into, is it kind of going in cohesively with where your generation is going in terms of spirituality and what that means?
It takes, with each generation, they're becoming much more and more self-expressive. So we envy them. Sometimes we're like, why can't we just do the thing? Why can't we just like be, quite like them?
Right,
And
right.
we're just like, maybe we're just getting old, sis. We're like, I don't know.
I absolutely love that, because it resonates so much with, like I said, every generation that moves forward kind of looks back and go, God, you guys are really free. You know what I mean? And
Really
like even the generation before that, I'm sure my mom's generation, look at these flower children. What are you doing? And then we came along, and it was like, you guys listen to this rap. That was the big sin that we did. All of a sudden you listen, putting ratings on your music, and then to hear you, with the generations coming behind you, and like, wow, they're really out there. But like I said, we're all supposed to be we're all supposed to be different. We're all supposed to come into the world with a
Exactly.
little bit something different to offer to the world and move into our own light and things such as that. Is there any other last words? In terms of just your overall feeling about where things are going in the world with your generation, my generation, and the generation behind you? What are your feelings and your senses about in terms of an optimistic perspective, or are we skidding off a little bit? I mean, I know there's a lot of noise right now. Don't get me wrong. I know there's
A lot of noise.
a lot of crazy stuff happening right now.
Yeah.
But when all is said and done, what is
I'm
Adjoa?
really optimistic because people aren't giving up. I don't think people are going to, you can see that the old system is still trying to hold on tight. They're still
Yes.
trying to make laws and do things in a way to keep us oppressed and to make things harder for us to be free.
Mm-hmm.
But people aren't letting up. And we're sharing information, we're spreading information, we're getting together. I just started a retreat company. Maybe I was sidelined this way, but that's not going to stop me from still creating the community that I want to create. And so I see a resilience in my generation, especially the generation below me, that we are going to continue to progress no matter what is happening around us, because I think a lot of people want to leave some sort of legacy. And the only way to do that is to be brave. And people want to make their mark in the world, and they want to be somebody, and they want to be, and so I don't see it letting up.
Wow.
I don't, I think it's only going to progress. Again, particularly because I'm African, there's this whole trend right now that's and the phrase is Africa to the world. And it is young people in Africa waking up, and even people in the diaspora just shouting from the rooftops, this is what we have to offer. This is what you'll find when you come to Africa. These are all the beautiful things, the inventions, the brilliance, all the young geniuses that are coming out of the continent.
Yeah.
That even Africa is rising up despite hundreds and hundreds of years of colonial violence and control and oppression. No matter, even though those things are happening, the young people of Africa are still rising up. They know they can be killed. They know that they can be jailed. Yeah. No matter what, they're saying, not today and not me. And if I have to go down for this, at least that's my legacy, and it'll inspire somebody else. I mean, Africans now are still being inspired by African leaders decades ago.
Yeah.
To recognize that if they didn't do this, we couldn't be where we are. And so there have to be, people that are taking the torch and passing it on. So I don't see any of that letting up anytime soon.
I love that.
Yeah. And again, our best chances are to get the guidance from the generation before us. We cannot do it alone. We're not doing it alone.
Right.
Again, some of the people that are mentoring us aren't even alive, but they're still mentoring us, and so it's just really important, not just for your generation to be mentoring us, but for my generation to recognize that we need the generation before us. We need to know what were their roadblocks, because history repeats itself.
It does.
So it's important that we recognize some of those systems of oppression to see how it could be playing out today, that we can figure out a way to maneuver around them. And you know what I mean? It's important that you still understand history, because if you don't know where you came from, how do you know where you're going all the time?
Right.
And
that's an intentional trap. Yeah, I feel like that's an intentional trap for your generation, for all the generations coming behind us, is to have that block to that history and that knowledge and that understanding.
Correct.
And
exactly.
I can tell you, I've been making sure that I create an intentional space for that to not fade. It was pressing on me before, like I said, when we first started, but it's become, why that pressed on me has come to fruition, and how this conversation between you and I is so important, and how I'll continue to have these conversations and to make sure that we're keeping this as a voice and a platform for you and the generations coming behind it as this podcast goes forward. And that's why you're here. I don't think anything is by chance. I don't think you coming into this space at this time with me right now is by chance, and that the words that you speak are important and need to be heard. And it has been a pleasure having all that with us. And I don't want to cut you off. If there's anything else that you want to add, and what you got going on, what do you have going on that you want to put out there, and how people who need to find you for mentorship maybe want to reach out to you, if that's something you want to do.
So You could just follow me on my personal Instagram. It's Michelle Saahene. It's my personal Instagram. And right now, I am creating, like I said, I'm creating that community. It's essentially a network accelerator for people who want to live, who people want to live rooted in community wellness and a sustainable luxury lifestyle. And it's about creating spaces for people who want to leave a legacy, but we need that support and we need that international network of people to do that. So, and all generations are welcome. I really want to create that community of people who want to lead by example, because progress only happens when people live and lead by example.
Absolutely.
But it can be very difficult to do that if you don't have people around you who are living that same way. I think I read something recently. It was like, hang out with 5 smokers and you'll become the 6th. Hang out with 5 business, women and you'll become the 6th. And so for those who are, coming off the last few years of all of this cultural movement, it can be hard to find your place and it can be hard to find your community if you're not already surrounded by people who want to make a difference in not just their lives, but the people around them. So I'm specifically creating a network accelerator. We're going to be in Marrakesh this August 20th.
Oh.
So mark your calendars. We're going to Marrakesh and we're going to the only Black-owned and woman-owned hotel in all of Morocco, which is crazy because it's in Africa, but she's the only Black woman who owns a hotel in Marrakesh.
Wow.
Her name is Marianne Loom Martin. She's she's another person who is a friend, but a mentor, because she could be my mother. And she is so invested in particularly young Black women achieving their dreams and helping them get to that place. So when I told her that I wanted to create a community and I wanted to, I wanted to travel and, luxury lifestyle, she was like, why don't you do the retreat at my hotel?
Oh, that is awesome.
Right
I love
there.
that.
And so anytime that I need advice, I just I text her, I call her, we collaborate. And
I love that.
And so I just want to be able to create those spaces for other people. And I went there in January. She invited me to her hotel. It was absolutely incredible.
Awesome.
Changed my life. Now I feel like I need to learn Arabic and French because I feel like I'm going to be a lot of time in Morocco. Yes. And I met people there who I'm going to have a relationship with for the rest of my life, who are definitely going to help me in the areas that I want to go to. So if I can create that for other people, even if you meet one person on my retreat that changes your life, it'll be worth it for me.
Okay, well, I want to go meet one person that's going to change my life. So
please come. Please
put
come.
it on the calendar. Oh, I absolutely love that. And I adore you. Oh, thank you so much. I am so grateful for you. So grateful to have you here in this space. And you are just going to be a blessing to the world. So I'm looking forward to what you're going to do next. So
thank you.
Absolutely.
You're out here doing it. Yeah. Thank you. I mean, I don't know any other podcasts who's specifically having these intergenerational conversations.
Okay. Well, that's why I was.
Yeah.
It came to me. It was pressing. It was on my heart. It was on my spirit. Yeah. So I'm following through. And
Beautiful.
I'm looking forward to seeing where you follow through as well.
Beautiful.
It's been great. Thank you so much, Adjoa.
Thank you. Talk to you soon.
Thank you for listening to 50 Now What? Make sure to follow us, rate, and share the show. Make sure to follow me on Instagram for continuous updates at 50 Now What Podcast. That's 50 Now What Podcast. This podcast was produced by Rainbow Creative with producer Matthew Jones and producer and editor Sean Leviashvili. I love working with this team. To learn more about making a podcast for you or your business, visit them at rainbowcreative.co.